Okay, so this lesson's about velocity, and the learning target is I know how velocity is measured, and I can make calculations of velocity. So in this one, we're going to focus more about how to make the calculations with velocity, figuring out how fast things are moving, and also how far things are moving based off of the velocity and the time that it travels. So first problem, just to review how to calculate velocity, is what is the average velocity of a car traveling 90 miles east in 1.5 hours? So the equation for velocity is distance divided by time. Remember the difference, whoops, that says distance. The difference between velocity and speed is that velocity has a direction to it. So we have our direction here when we say east. So we just write out our equation first. We are trying to find the average velocity. And we have our information here, 90 miles, which is a distance, and we have 1.5 hours, which is a time. And so now we can just plug in here. We have V equals 90 miles divided by 1.5 hours, and that's going to equal 60 miles per hour. And then because it's a velocity, we're going to add in the east here. And you could also write that as 60 mph. Remember, this is the way that we would show miles per hour for us, but when we're calculating speed, we're going to be using mostly meters per second in this. So just a review on how to calculate velocity. So if we're trying to calculate things like time and distance with our velocity calculations here, we have to move around this equation. So if we started with V equals d over t, we could do some algebra to get t by itself. I would multiply both sides by t. That would cancel this side out, so I would be left with t times v equals d. And then I'd have to divide both sides by v in order to get t by itself in this equation. I would have d over v would equal t. Now, if you're a little bit shaky with algebra, we do have a little tool that's going to help us out here. And it's called the equation triangle. And we can use it to get any of the equations that we need for velocity. And it's something that you should probably write on all of your worksheets, all of your quizzes, everything when you're doing these equations, if it can help you out. So we draw our triangle, and then we're going to take the triangle, we're going to split it down the horizontal, and we're going to split it down the vertical. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put V in the bottom left-hand corner. We're going to put D in the top part, and we're going to put T in the bottom right-hand corner. And the way that you can remember this is, it actually looks like V equals D over T, and that's how we're going to get our equation. So D needs to be on the top. See how this little looks like a division symbol right here? That's how you can remember that, D divided by T. And so that's how your equation is going to be set up. And actually we can start off with this. So you're going to know that V equals D over T. And so that's how you get your equation set up. So let's say that we were going to try to solve for T now. Right, we could do the algebra to try to get t by itself, or what we could do is we could use this triangle. And the first step that you're going to do when you're using this triangle is you're going to, number one, cover up the variable you're looking for. Okay, and I'm going to do that by putting this black box over the top of that t. Now what I have is I have d divided by v. And that's actually going to be my equation to calculate my time. So I'm going to have d divided by v. See how this horizontal line here looks like a division symbol? That's what it's going to be in our equation. And so the second step is to actually use what you're left with and write that equation out just like I just did. So use to write equation. If you're a stepwise person, you think you need to have a step, use to write equation. Oops, that's supposed to be an A, and that's supposed to be T, I, O, N. There we go. Now we're cooking. So now let's say that we were going to look for distance. Let's say I had a question that was asking, how far will a car go if it travels at 55 miles per hour for 2 hours? The way that we would do that is we would first cover up the variable that we're looking for. So we know that we're looking for D in this case. We're going to cover up the variable that we're looking for. So we're looking for D. So we're going to go take this box and we're going to cover it up. And we're left with V and T down on the bottom. And now when we have a vertical line like this, we can treat this as a multiplication symbol. And so our equation is going to be v times t. V times t, and I put the little dot there instead of a multiplication symbol so it doesn't look like an x. And so this would be our equation for finding the distance that something would travel at a certain velocity over the certain course of time. So this equation triangle is going to save you a lot of time, especially if algebra is not quite your thing yet, you're not comfortable with it. The equation triangle is definitely something to use. So let's say this problem here. How long would it take a car to travel 30 meters at 5.5 meters per second? So the first thing that I like to do here is write out my equation triangle. I know that my velocity equals my distance divided by my time, and so I can set up my triangle there. Now I like to go through and see, okay, what am I looking for? And so I'm looking for how long would it take? Right now, if I think about that, is that a velocity, is that a distance, or is that a time? Well, how long would it take? That's talking about a time. And so I know that I'm looking for time. And I know that the stuff that I have is 30 meters, which is a distance, and I have 5.5 meters per second, which is a velocity. So now it shouldn't be too hard to solve this problem. Now I look, okay, I'm looking for time. So t equals, I can get my equation, I'm going to cover this up by scribbling over it, and I'm left with d divided by v. Right, so my equation is going to be d divided by v. And so if I take the distance and divide by the velocity, I should have my time. So I'm going to plug in my distance, which is 30 meters, and I have my velocity, which I'm going to plug in right here, for 5.5 meters per second, and I should get 5.45 seconds. Should be my answer for that. That's how long it should take. So first, figure out what I'm looking for, find out what I have, get my equation using my equation triangle, and then solve the problem. So the question in this last one is, how much distance could a cheetah cover if it moved at 19 meters per second for 7 seconds? The way I start off every problem is to draw my equation triangle. Velocity equals distance over time, and here we go. So now I'm going to look for, what am I trying to find in here? I am trying to find out how much distance, so I know that I'm looking for d. Could a cheetah cover if it moved at 19 meters per second for 7 seconds? I know that I have a velocity of 19 meters per second, and I have a time of 7 seconds. And so what I can do here is first start with d equals, I'm trying to find my equation. I'm going to cover up that variable. I'm going to show a multiplication here. And then what I'm going to do is take my last two variables, v times t. So d equals v times t. And I know that if I substitute in my velocity right here, and I substitute in my time right here, I should be able to get the distance that this cheetah covers. And I'm going to use parentheses just to keep my units separate. 19 meters per second times 7 seconds, and that is going to equal 133 meters. And I can check my work because my seconds should cancel out for my units because I have one under the division symbol and one above the division symbol, one getting multiplied by. And so I have 133 meters. So by the end of this, you should be able to make calculations of velocity, distance, and time using the equation triangle or the velocity equation.